being a Star Wars fan, I have plenty of characters that I love and find to be amazing. But probably the one that sticks out to me the most, and the one I love the most, is Count Dooku, portrayed by the legendary Sir Christopher Lee on screen. Fun fact, Sir Christopher Lee actually had George Lucas make him a character because he wanted to be in the verse. That's how legendary Sir Christopher Lee was, so rest in peace. But anyways, one of the aspects of Count Dooku often overlooked is just how powerful he is. So with that being said, today's video I will go over feats from every major category I usually do in my versus battle and describe the power and how incredibly dangerous Count Dooku from both Legends and canon was. So let's get into it. Now, just a quick heads up, because of the nature of most of my scans, which is from novels and written text, I might not be able to post visuals as much, so I might just go with gameplay footage of Count Dooku. If that's the case, I'll just link a lot of my sources, and I'll be naming my sources as well throughout the video so you guys know where I'm getting it from. But let's get right into it. So the first one we are going to go over for categories is strength. Now, Count Dooku is surprisingly strong for his age. He's casually used a punch to one-shot a Night Sister, witches of the Force that are easily superhuman. He, in the Dark Disciple novel, was able to easily pin down Quinlan Vos, who is a physically gifted Jedi Master. Specifically, it says, Dooku had a knee planted firmly in Vos's back, using the Force to augment his own not inconsiderable strength. Vos couldn't move. The Count twisted the arm with which Vos still clutched his humming lightsaber, squeezing down with inhuman strength on the webbing between the thumb and the forefinger. So, not only was he super strong, he was inhumanly strong, even to a Jedi. He's been able to ragdoll Saz Ventress with a simple kick. His one kick casually KO'd Kenobi in a fight in the comics. It was stated because of the nature of the way Dooku uses the Force, he is probably top tier for strength among Sith and Jedi. This is from the book Labyrinth of Evil. It basically explains that Jedi have a penchant for showing mercy, for granting forgiveness, for heeding the dictates of conscience, preventing them from giving themselves over to the dark side, from becoming as a force of nature itself, paranormally strong and quick, capable of conjuring Sith lightning, of exteriorizing rage, all without the need for the magic hand passes the Jedi were so fond of employing. So basically, when Count Dooku goes over to the dark side, he's accessing a more primal side of the Force that allows him to become physically dominant. This is also showcased when Obi-Wan Kenobi could barely withstand a Dooku physical assault, and which is more impressive due to his style being finesse. Specifically, in the fact file number 49, Obi-Wan Kenobi stated that he found himself hard-pressed to hold against the dark side, augmented strength of his opponent, even though his own abilities with the Force were far from slight. We also know that in both the movie and in Legends, he had the physical strength to hold off a pissed-off Yoda. With a sudden burst of sheer power, Master Yoda flew forward, his blade working so mightily that its residual glow outshone even those of both Anakin's lightsabers, where he was at the peak of his dance. Dooku held strong though, his red blade parrying brilliantly, each block backed by the power of the Force, or else Yoda's strikes would have driven right through. So this of course shows that even Yoda, pissed off, trying to blitz and overpower Dooku was able to hold his own. Dooku even held him off, and it's shown in the movie, with one hand while using the Force, diverting with the Force to bring down a large object upon Anakin and Kenobi. He's also been able to use casual blows to stun Asajj. He physically batted away Savage's onslaught with no difficulty. Physically pushed late Clone Wars Anakin away. He's physically bullied both Anakin and Kenobi multiple times. Quinlan Vos with a Rage Amp wasn't actually affecting Dooku's guard. In fact, it said Dooku retreated under the assault, but to Voss it seemed as though the Count didn't have much trouble parrying the blows. This was in Dark Disciple. He was able to physically ragdoll both Kenobi and Anakin in Revenge of the Sith. And so, as a synopsis, Dooku's prime Sith days is actually surprisingly strong. He's easily batted away Savage's blows, whereas Savage could break the guard of Kenobi. He batted away Grievous's strikes, withstood Yoda, and won blade locks, and physically brutalized Kenobi, Anakin, and Quinlan Voss. Also, it's important with Grievous. We know Legends Grievous. Mace considered to have perhaps the strongest physical strikes of anyone, and Dooku routinely held off Grievous without much issue. Now, we will go over speed. Now, he left late Padawan Anakin in his dust. Basically, this version of Anakin, even when enraged, was nothing to the casual Dooku. Obi-Wan understood immediately, even before he noted Anakin's blue blade coming up and over the other way. The green blade would push the Count's lightsaber out of the way, clearing the path for the victorious strike. But Dooku retracted impossibly fast, and Anakin's downcutting green blade hit nothing but air. His blade, at one point in the fight, was all Kenobi could see. As Obi-Wan gave ground, Dooku quickened the pace. His every move was economical and elegant. His lightsaber seemed to be everywhere. This is also, will be touched on later on in the skill section of how his style works, because Jocasta Nu said, with a lightsaber in the old style of fencing, he had no match. Now Kenobi could see what she meant. Kenobi could barely perceive his movement when he fought Anakin. The Count smiled slightly. Obi-Wan was not sure at whom, and his blade flicked out almost too fast to see. Anakin screamed as his right arm dropped to the floor, cut off at the elbow. This is important because we know for a fact that Anakin and Obi-Wan easily could perceive near relative light speed attacks, as well as light speed attacks even faster than light speed due to scaling. And at this point, Dooku was too fast for them to perceive. He was able to match Yoda's speed, who's able to blitz and eventually he's able to duel and then eventually unarmed, disarm Sidious. The Jedi Master Yoda confronted Dooku. The two engaged in a titanic struggle of force powers, neither besting the other. Came down to a contest of lightsabers. In a blurring tangle of speed and light, the two masters of the Force dueled. Ventress and Legends, who can blitz Jedi Masters, can't even react to Dooku. This was in Dark Disciple. For an instant, the two, their faces only centimeters apart, stared into each other's eyes in a mockery of lovers. Then Dooku heaved her up and sent her sprawling. Unable to catch herself in time, Ventress landed heavily with a grunt. He downed both Kenobi and Anakin before they could react, and before droid pieces fell a few inches from the ground. This is in the Revenge of the Sith novel. Kenobi reached the top of the stairs and a single slash of his lightsaber dismantled the droids before their pieces could even hit the floor. So less than a second. Dooku was in motion, landing a spinning side stamp that folded Skywalker in half. He used his last burst of dark power to continue his spin into a blindingly fast wheel kick that brought his heel against the point of Kenobi's chin with a crack like the report of a huge bore slug thrower, knocking the Jedi Master back down the stairs. Sounded like he broke in his neck. Wouldn't that be lovely? And in the rise and fall of Darth Vader, he was faster than Kenobi. The two droids fired at Obi-Wan, but he battered their fire energy bolts back at them and cut them down as he moved fast for Dooku. Unfortunately, Dooku moved faster. Asajj and Savage literally can't touch unarmed Dooku as he toyed with him. He was able to blitz Asajj, Savage, and even Anakin separate occasions. He toyed with a Grievous that later blitzed Ki-Adi-Mundi and Shaak Ti without issue. Nearly blitzed Yoda. This is on Dark Rendezvous. It is important to note it was on a Dark Side Nexus, but still this is very impressive. The blinding scarlet blur of Dooku's lightsaber split the air, slashing a burning line along Yoda's side before chopping his desk in half. Then their blades clashed together in a lace of fire, green and red, but the green burned hotter. Slowly, Dooku gave way. And in the dark, drunken Vajun air, Yoda was terrible to behold. Now, this is important because he nearly blitzed him, actually cut Yoda's clothes, but Yoda was going all out and not playing around, and still Dooku was able to match the ferocity. Speed synopsis. Count Dooku in Sith Prime is one of the fastest in the verse. He is relative to Yoda even when Yoda is pissed. Casually danced around Asajj Ventress and Savage Opress, is blatantly faster than Obi-Wan, and toyed with a Grievous who easily blitzed a group of Jedi. Now to durability section. Enraged Voss could not harm him in their encounter. Voss dived and leaped, darted and struck like a snake, leaping onto the railings and kicking Dooku square in the face with his boot. The Count's head snapped backward, and for one glorious, wild instant, Voss thought he had broken Dooku's neck. But then Dooku rallied and pressed the attack. He was smiling broadly, his eyes gleaming with approval. So an enraged, force-amped kick from Voss, capable of snapping Dooku's neck, just made Dooku smile. Dooku took a blaster bolt, got up, fought, then tanked his own lightning that was killing Asajj, and was still talking his shit. Dooku stood, his teeth bared in a savage snarl of victory. Ventress was caught in the most violent bolts of force lightning Voss had ever seen. They danced and crackled around her hungrily, almost like living creatures. Her body spasmed, and her face contorted into a mask of absolute agony. Asajj, Voss cried, leaping, but also I'll be skipping through parts so it doesn't take forever. Leaping between Ventress and Dooku. He activated his lightsaber, deflecting the force lightning back onto Dooku. The Count's eyes widened in comprehension a split second before his own weapon turned on him, disloyal as things of the dark always were. Dooku was flung back and lay on the ground, screaming and trembling, then lying still as the bolts faded. 3 strides brought Voss to Dooku. He pressed a humming blade close to Dooku's neck. Do it, rasped Dooku, and possibly he was smiling. The lightning wasn't for her, it was for you. She just got in the way. Go on, take your revenge. Vu's heart shook his body with his pounding. The Count still smiled, still anticipating the final step that would turn Voss irrevocably to the dark side. So as you can see, he had already tanked the bolt, and then he tanks his own lightning and is laughing, trying to get Voss to kill him so that Voss becomes a Darksider. Pissed Anakin in the movie couldn't do anything to Dooku even when he threw a kick that sent him flying backwards. Dooku can heal and sustain himself. He's old, Anakin thought. Maybe I can just outlast him, but the power of the dark side flowed around him, denying that possibility. The dark side would keep Dooku going as long as he needed. That is in the Revenge of the Sith Junior novelization. He can heal and reinvigorate himself easily. He pushed this aside, drawing once more upon the certain knowledge of his personal invincibility to open a channel to the Force. Power flowed into him and the weight of his years dropped away. He fell hundreds of feet in the show, did no damage. So for a synopsis for durability, truthfully, Dooku's durability is rarely tested. However, we have seen him withstand his own lightning AP after being wounded right before by a blaster bolt. He's tanked falling hundreds of feet, withstood bloodlusted Voss and Asajj, and can heal and reinvigorate himself. Now to the intelligence and skill section. One of the scariest sections when it comes to Count Dooku. He is a prodigy. In adolescence, Dooku became the Padawan learner of Thame Cerulean, a Jedi scholar on the Council who called Dooku the finest swordsman he'd ever seen. He was a legendary swordsman among the Jedi. Dooku had been a master duelist even among Jedi, and Anakin forgot that for a pain-blinded moment in the Clone Wars. With 2 such powerful masters, Dooku quickly grew to become a most powerful and respected Jedi, and an acknowledged master lightsaber duelist. Yoda took a keen interest in the young Dooku. He assisted in Dooku's combat training, and as a result, the Padawan became especially proficient with the lightsaber. Only masters Yoda and Mace Windu were considered to be on equal terms with him. This is from Insider number 109. Only Mace himself ever mastered it, and it was reckoned that only Master Yoda and Dooku were ever able to match Windu with a lightsaber. Dooku had been reckoned one of the foremost duelists in the Jedi Order, only second to Master Yoda. This would actually put him above Mace, and we do know that in Legends, Dooku was counted for having victories over Mace Windu in dueling sessions. Under Yoda's tutelage, Dooku became one of the greatest sword masters the Order had ever produced, eclipsed only by Windu and Yoda himself. Yoda taught many pupils throughout his years, including Dooku, who became one of the finest masters the Order ever produced. It is also noted his diplomacy and intelligence rivals his skill as a duelist. Dooku was said to be one of the Order's finest lightsaber masters, and he had earned a reputation as a skilled diplomat as well. This was in the Plagueis novel. His slightly curved lightsaber hilt too might have been a prop, though he was known to be one of the Order's most skilled duelists. He's a perfectionist in all aspects. Once a legend even among his own Jedi, Count Dooku's desire to be the best in every aspect of his training led him to become one of the finest duelists in the Jedi Temple. Sidious himself recruited Count Dooku because of his skill and intelligence. It was Dooku's experience with Form 2 lightsaber fighting style that was a major consideration for Sidious when selecting the former Jedi to be his next student. He was fully aware that his apprentice would eventually engage in duels against other Jedi, and believed that Dooku's emphasis on pure lightsaber combat would be a tremendous advantage. What's scary about this is after all those feats, he would only get stronger once he became a Sith. However, once Dooku left the Jedi Order to become an apprentice to the Sith Lord Darth Sidious, his skills became even more formidable. Yoda admitted that Dooku is at worst third best of all time in Dark Rendezvous. The Count's blade was quick as a viper striking. Among the other Jedi, perhaps only Mace Windu would have been equal on neutral ground. But here on Vajun, steeped in the dark side, his blade works was malice made visible, wickedness cut in red light. This also implies from Yoda himself that Dooku would have killed Windu. A couple mentions of him perhaps being second best. Dooku carried a lightsaber with a curved hilt handle and practiced an elegant fighting style. He could outclass nearly any opponent except for Yoda. Dooku carried a lightsaber with a curved... I'm sorry, I didn't want to read that again. But those came in two separate issues. Insider Lord of the Sith and Insider Issue 13. In the highest of tiers and knowledge of Force and skill, with a nearly unrivaled knowledge of the Force combined with formidable skill with a lightsaber, Dooku was virtually indomitable. It must have been difficult for him to have served under methodical masters such as Dooku. Consummate planner, consummate duelist. This comes from the Labyrinth of Evil. Sidious implied Mother Talzin was nothing to Dooku in terms of skill. You control Dooku's body, but you possess none of his skill. This came from Son of Dathomir comics. It's important because we saw Talzin duel Mace Windu and keep up with him in the show. Kenobi considered Dooku to be superior to even Maul. Count Dooku's fall has troubled us all, Obi-Wan said. Now we have a great and powerful enemy. His thoughts turned to his battle with Dooku. He had never met such power in battle before. He had never come up against something who had completely overpowered him. Even meeting the Sith Lord who had killed Qui-Gon had not been the same. This was in Legacy of the Jedi. And of course, one of the more infamous skill moments, he bested Mace before. Master Windu himself remained perfectly balanced and centered. In the history of the Jedi Order, only two opponents ever overcame him in battle. One was Master Yoda, who some said was the Order's true master of lightsaber combat. The other was former Master Dooku, whose own fighting style was archaic yet stunningly effective. Now we will move on because, I do feel like although I'll add this one last scene. Here, his decades of lightsaber training gave him the ability to parry and riposte against Yoda's frenzied Form 4 fighting style. Although the match ended in a stalemate. Stalemate, people. He stalemated Yoda. Many Jedi believed Dooku would return for another confrontation with the Jedi. Forced to cross sabers with Dooku, Yoda falls back on his knowledge of Form 4, an acrobatic style that lets him overcome the natural limitations of his size and reach. He lacks the stamina of youth, but calls on the Force to fight the Sith Lord to a draw. Now, what's crazy is even his doppelganger, which I'll talk about in Force abilities, which is 50% of his power, beat Attack of the Clones age Kenobi. Whereas Master Kenobi, wounded in a fight against Dooku, the Force will mend his wounds in time. This came in the new droid army. Now, perhaps the scariest thing as a duelist, Dooku actually injured Yoda in their second encounter. Dooku battled his former tutor Yoda on Geonosis, then again on Vajun. On both occasions, Dooku fled before the outcome was clear, although he penetrated Yoda's defenses enough to wound him in the second occasion. So yeah, intelligence and skill synopsis. Truthfully, Count Dooku as a Prime Sith is honestly tied as the third best duelist of his time off pure skill, with Yoda at first, Mace and Sidious tied for second. Slight edge slightly to Mace, and Anakin and Dooku being tied for third. Dooku even hurt Yoda in a duel, something Sidious was unable to even replicate. He bullied Grievous, Ventress, Oppress, Voss, Kenobi, and Skywalker, and usually was always fighting multiple high-tier foes. His intelligence is also nearly unrivaled, as even Sidious stated Dooku was way above Talzin. He is tied for second in my opinion for his time, with Sidious and Yoda tied for first. Now for hacks, I will kind of go over the feats themselves, and if you want a more detailed, like me actually reading them, I will. But for the sake of time, I'll just go over what he did by my annotations of the feats. Yoda is amazed by Dooku's connection to the Force. This even made Dooku almost unpredictable even for Yoda. He is considered one of the strongest Force users to date. He's projected to be equal to Yoda if he had stayed. I'll read this one just so y'all hear it. Dooku was a unique case in the history of the Jedi Order. Universally respected, he would have been a master on a par with Yoda had he not abandoned the Order to join its greatest enemies. Yoda considered Dooku one of the wisest, most gifted Force users. Dooku grew stronger from the previous showings, as evidenced by these moments when he joined Sidious. Simple telekinesis from Dooku left dark side energy. Characters like Vader leave these traces. His power and quickness to utilize it is alarming. At first, I believed Dooku was being an ass when he said him and Yoda were Force equals. However, multiple other sources confirmed it was a stalemate in the Force. Dooku has power that was relatable to Sidious, and I actually am considering doing a video on Dooku and Sidious's relationship. I think it's fascinating. Sir Christopher Lee said he was about it, so obviously Dooku is about it. Dooku's stated power enhanced by Sith holocrons. Asajj and Savage combined were nowhere near the raw power of Count Dooku. Maul's writer states Maul isn't on Dooku's level of power, but can rival him in other ways, but he does admit in the Force it's not. Dooku's Force connection makes him the center of the universe. I'll read this quick paragraph. He called upon the Force, gathering to himself and wrapping himself within it. He breathed in and held it whirling inside his heart, clenching down upon it until he could feel the spin of the galaxy around him, till he became the axis of the universe. He learned thousands of years of Sith Force knowledge by ripping with the Force through holocrons, and he already added this and stacked it on top of being perhaps the smartest Jedi of his time. He knows all mind tricks and healing methods privy to Jedi. He's a truly studied Baneite. Dooku knows way more than Asajj. Dooku has supreme Force mastery. Sneak techniques are bypassed by Dooku. He has high-level empathy. His doppelganger, he can produce a 50% clone, has high-level empathy. Even light years away, he has insane Force sense. He's one of the best Force sensitives, period. He has high-tier awareness and precog. He gets the drop on all Jedi, including Mace. He has a high-tier stealth attribute through the Force. He uses specific techniques to do so. His Force healing negs a lethal plague. His Force mind hacks can even mess up Kenobi's mind. Kenobi negged a device meant to wipe Jedi minds, but still Dooku was bodying him. He literally mind controls a crate dragon as a pet. He easily has high-tier resistance to Force and life drain. Doesn't affect him at all. I'm referring to the Dark Reaper in the new Essential chronology. The Doppelganger was able to run around and do hood rat stuff even against high-tier Jedi Masters. Doppelganger beat up Anakin. He can fly with the Force and float down on you, looking real pimpin'. Falling doesn't mean anything to him because he can use Force Glide. He was able to violate Anakin Skywalker with a telekinetic grip and throw. Anakin thinks he got hit by blasts that down capital-sized ships with our city-sized. Casually rained down massive vehicles in a furious flurry. His TK Blue Lightning was unknown to the time to Jedi. Literally, he casually bodied Voss and Ventress with the Force. Kenobi's Force walls only require a flick of Dooku's wrist. He ragdolled Kenobi again. He used the Force casually on Sora Bulk, former Jedi Master, and Thulm. He can use multi-step Force attacks, choke, lift, disarm simultaneously. He can body characters with telekinesis without trying. His former apprentice and a decent Force user, Kamari Vosa, gets killed via Force choke. His simple TK push leans Kenobi and Anakin, who were ready. Anakin has no chance of reacting to his lightning that TK pushes as well simultaneously. His force shields are multiple times above Kenobi's. Mace couldn't move him. He can absorb and deflect his own lightning. He can make Call of Duty like zombies when he raises the dead. His force trap cages can even pin Anakin in. Anakin, his raw power rivals and is above pretty much anyone. Even Kenobi was mentally damaged by the force cage. He can juggle force lightning with dueling. He can manipulate lightning into becoming barriers. Yoda had trouble with a short burst of lightning from Dooku. He one-shot multiple warriors with his lightning, instantly knocked out Maul with lightning. One shot killed Zabrak Night Brothers with Force Lightning Chain. Heavily drugged Dooku bodies 3 Night Sisters and Ventress immediately with lightning. One shot former Master Sora Bulk. Maul backing Talzin was bodied by weakened Dooku backing Sidious. Pissed off Dooku one shot killed Asajj Ventress. He was heavily hurt at the time as well. TK pushed Mace Windu. So in a conclusion, Dooku is a high tier force user. His TK lightning combo is reminiscent of Malgus, perhaps better. Dooku's manipulation is very intricate and even Maul level durability is violated. His simple force push ragdolls Anakin, Kenobi, and even Mace. He can create force traps on the go even Anakin couldn't break. He knows all the things essentially in the Force. He easily sees through deception and tricks. His Force walls are consistently top tier, rivaling Yoda. He can use doppelganger and complex sorcery. He can use multiple different Force abilities simultaneously, making him a credible threat to even Yoda tier characters. His mind hacks can even affect Kenobi, who is high tier in mental prowess. Lastly, his lightsaber is built to maximize his style. So there you have it. I hope you guys enjoyed this Count Dooku showing. This is a very long video, perhaps my longest power scaling video of all time, but it's Sir Christopher Lee's Count Dooku. I have to do it to him. Let me know what you think. Like, subscribe, comment. If you join the Patreon, you get all the access to my scams. So you'll get all the access to this Count Dooku stuff I'm talking about. There's even more, but for the sake of time, I had to hold it down. Anyways, it's been your boy Sir Splash. Like, subscribe, comment, and I'll see y'all later. Peace.